So we all have certain things that we say are true. But the interesting thing is our behavior sometimes contradicts this, and it makes it seem as though we don't actually believe what we say we really think is true. It's like we have an internal encyclopedia that we compose and edit throughout our lives. When we accept something as true, we write it down in the encyclopedia, and we file it away. We can see this guy has 3 of them already. He's been writing down a fair amount of stuff in his encyclopedias. And as he gets older, he'll write more and more things down, and he may even find that it's difficult to find what he's written down sometimes. When we consider something, or someone asks us a question, we pull out this dictionary and we consult it to get the right answer, the one that we think is really true, and the one that we say we think is really true. Now, this isn't exactly the way that the brain thinks, though. The brain thinks in pictures. It thinks in paradigms. It thinks in points of view, or what you might call belief windows. And these belief windows are not formed necessarily out of what we write in our encyclopedia. Instead, they're formed in a multitude of ways. Now, we may write something down in our encyclopedia, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we've got it onto our belief window. Our belief window and the statements thereon are formed by certain things. The experiences that we go through, or perhaps what authority figures tell us, or even what we might imagine to be true. I think that person over there doesn't like me. I think they're saying these things about whatever thing that you think can influence the way that you imagine the world to be. But they might not quite be accurate. And that imagining is just another word for the image-making capabilities of your mind. Now, these images might flatly contradict what you have written down in your encyclopedia. Let's take a few examples. For instance, you might have an image of skiing where you say skiing is fun. Now, if that's the case, you'll want to go on that trip. But if you have an image of skiing that says skiing is not fun, skiing is dangerous, I don't like skiing, it doesn't matter what you have written in your encyclopedia. You may think that all dogs will bite you. You've had some bad experiences with dogs, perhaps. Or you may have written on your belief window something like, once people really get to know me, they won't like me. Or, I must win every argument in order to preserve my sense of self-worth. You might have the idea that flying in planes is fun, or flying in planes is not fun. All of these things go on to our belief window. And we write statements and we make mental movies and pictures to go along with these things. For instance, you might have written on your belief window, dogs will bite me. And it doesn't matter if you have written down in your encyclopedia that there are many nice dogs. The fact is, it's still written on your belief window. And so that's the way that you are going to see the world. When you see a dog, you're going to think, dogs will bite me. You might have something written on your belief window like, God finds me unlovable. Now, if that's the case, it doesn't matter that you have written down in your encyclopedia that God can love even the most unlovable, that God can forgive even the most vile of sinners, and that He loved the world and so He sent His Son. No, you'll see the world through this filter that you've placed on your belief window. You might have written on your belief window, my sin keeps Jesus away from me. And although in your encyclopedia you might have something like, I will never leave you nor forsake you, or Jesus saying, lo, I am with you always, the fact is, if you sin, you will view yourself through your belief window and say, Jesus is now far from me. And you may find yourself trying to work to get back to Him rather than resting in His forgiveness and going to Him for grace. So it doesn't really matter whether you have something written in your encyclopedia if it doesn't get onto your belief window. So how do you take the things that you really know are true, that you've written down in your encyclopedia, and actually transfer them into your belief window? Well, one way is experiences. But it's kind of hard to do experiences because all of your experiences are filtered through that belief window still. So you have to change what is written on the belief window. One of the most powerful ways to do that is by using that picture-making capability in your mind. As you recall, we don't store our thoughts so much in encyclopedias as making movies. Now, if you think that all dogs will bite you, that's a pretty bad belief to have, especially if you're a dog. But if you use that image-making capability of your mind to imagine maybe nice, gentle animals and petting them and forming a 5-sense picture of this, how the dog feels, how the dog smells, how the dog is reacting to you, and then even have an emotional reaction to that. Wow, I like this. That'll be good. Now, God gives us a lot of pictures in the Bible, and I think He made creation in such a way that He could use this picture-making capability of the mind. He says, I'll shelter you under the shadow of my wings. And we get this idea of a bird sheltering its young. I think God wants us to use that picture-making capability of our minds to imagine Him doing that, and that will allow us to form an emotional connection and a full mental image of exactly how God wants to shelter us and care for us. Now, God said that He'll never leave us or forsake us. So I think it's entirely appropriate to imagine Him being with us. As a matter of fact, it makes more sense to imagine Him being with us than to imagine Him not being with us, since He's told us that He is with us. Now, some people don't want to use this picture-making capability of their minds, except for maybe silly things or fiction novels or things like that. But I think that when you're going to be contemplating serious subjects, it's entirely appropriate to be using the picture-making qualities of your mind so that you write the correct beliefs on your belief window. So what are you writing on your belief window?